guys, happy Thursday. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2 Loki figures that I've collected over the period of months, and these 2 Loki figures are from Eagle Moss, which is a hand-painted company that create figures like they do Marvel figures and Doctor Who and Star Trek figures now, and they're really cheap too. I got both of these, one for Christmas and one for my birthday, from Jeff, my fiance. So hope you enjoy this video, me talking a little bit about them. Please like, comment and subscribe to this video if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to click on the notification bell so you're updated about any future videos. So the first figure I'm going to talk about is this Loki figure, which is from the first Thor film. And he's carrying the Tesseract, a little box, and there's a little cube inside, and you can see it here. And there's a scene in the first Thor film, I think, where he picks up this box, and the scene is, as you know, in the first film, Loki doesn't know he's adopted and doesn't know he's a frost giant and stuff. So he finds that out because a frost giant touches him on his actual arm, and he's a frost giant, so he's like half frost giant and he's half god in a way, because Thor is kind of like Odin's and Frigga's real son, but he's adopted and he didn't know. So there's a scene in the first Thor film where he has a conflict with Odin, and before he has the conflict, he picks up this box in the film, and the first line he says is, "Am I cursed?" And then Odin says, "No, you're not. You're my son, whom I love." And it's Tom Hiddleston and Anthony Hopkins doing the conflict, and they both sort of argue with each other, and he sort of says, "Why did you take me? It took me for a purpose." And he says, like, you know, why? Because I'm the monster that everyone tells the children about at night. And he goes into a conflict with Anthony Hopkins, because this is when he's like sort of misunderstood, and he doesn't think he fits in the family as much because of the way he is. And he said, "You should have told me the truth, that I was who I was, that he's a frost giant." And he said, "I didn't want to tell you." And he said, "I took you because I thought we could find peace between the kingdoms, because, as you know, they're in conflict with the frost giants in the film." So that's why he's got a box in his hand. And obviously, as you know, I'm a big Loki fan, and I love the Thor films. I'm addicted to them. Obviously, I love Tom Hiddleston because he's a really good actor and he plays Loki very well. So that's the first figure, and that's the history behind that. The second figure is this, and this is a Loki figure from the first Avenger film, which was made in 2012, I believe, which is quite a long time ago, I know. And I remember when I first watched it, funnily enough, and I was amazed by everyone in it. I loved all the superheroes in it, and I even loved Loki because I was watching this thing on YouTube on the shorts, and there was these things where it says in Thor he was kind of like a villain, and then pre-Avengers he was anti-hero, so he was like villain, and then in like going towards Ragnarok and Infinity War, into the Loki series, he was a hero. So, yeah. And obviously in Infinity War, there's a scene where he sacrifices himself in front of Thor, and he tells him that he's an Odinson and that he's proud to be Thor's brother, because he tricks Thanos a lot in the end one, but he ends up getting strangled, and he says, "You'll never be a god," to Thanos, and then Thanos has no resurrections this time, so he dies in that. But Loki is one of those people who dies every time, but he comes back to life in the films. And I thought that after Infinity War, and I thought it was the end of Loki, obviously. But then I found out after a few months that there was a scene in Endgame where he grabs the Tesseract and he teleports to another dimension. And that was the sort of incoming of the Loki series and the things behind that. So I thought I'd share that with you. And obviously this Loki from the first Avengers film, in the first Avengers, obviously he's a villain. And he has this staff too. And this staff actually has a name in the Norse mythology, which I can't remember what it's called, but it has an actual name in the Norse mythology, like Mjolnir has a proper Norwegian name in the Norse mythology, but they just mean that it's their weapons. But in the first Avengers, obviously, I'll tell you a bit about it. He is an anti-hero, so he's a villain, and he's trying to stop the Avengers. And he's, being evil, as per usual, because he is evil. But a lot of Loki's tribulations is he's a little bit misunderstood and he's a bit hurt by certain things. So that's why he becomes the way he becomes, because he becomes evil from the first one, because he knows he doesn't belong in the family anymore, and he just realises that I'm my own person now. But he basically, manipulates, Clint Barton, I think his name is, who's Hawkeye. He basically, manipulates him, makes him, he mind controls people with his staff as well, and makes them work for him. And obviously Eric's there too. And he steals the Tesseract because he's going to use it to send the Centauri into New York. But I think it's set in London, but they made it look like New York, if you know what I mean. But they just put I don't know whether it's CGI or it's a proper set, but they made it look like New York, and he basically tries to kill everyone and basically tries to rule the earth and tries to be a god, but it doesn't go very well for him. And then in Dark World, he gets arrested and he gets sentenced to jail, and he says, have a mother, and then Frigga says, don't make yourself more in trouble. And Odin says that, he says something like, I'm a god, I deserve to be ruled. And he's like, Odin says, you deserve to die like you did when you was a baby on a rock or something. I can't remember the line now, but he says I can't remember the line now, but he says, I'm trying to think now. He says, your birthright was to die on a rock and stuff. I think that's what it is. And he says that you're going to go into the dungeon and stuff. And he said you'll never see Frigga again. And then he says, well, while I'm in the cell, you let Thor be king then? And he says, yeah, if I have to. And he basically gets him and sends him to the dungeon. And I think in For the Dark World, there's this new enemy called the Dark Elves as well, which is in the film. But yeah, he's misunderstood and hurt. And I remember there was a scene in Dark World which made me kind of sad, because it made me think, you know, if he hadn't said that, then maybe if he hadn't said that before his mum died, then his adoptive mum figure. And his adoptive mum figure says to him, like, you know, something about, you know, Odin, and he says, he's not my father. And then she goes, like, shouting at her, and she says, well, am I not your mother then? And he goes, no, you're not. And then she sort of disappears, and he tries to touch her because he feels bad for saying it. And I know there's a scene in which Frigga dies because of Loki, because I didn't know anything about that until I watched the Loki series, where it explains it a lot more. Because as you know, the Loki from the Loki series is a Loki variant from 2012, which is the Avengers, and he teleports to another realm, and there's this new company called the TVA, and they're called Time Vaults for it, and they take him, and he doesn't know any of what's happened, and he watches like a projection of pretty much his life and what happens and what's going to happen. And he also meets like other variants, like other Loki variants, like Sylvie, Lady Sylvie, who's actually Lady Loki, and he meets other versions of himself, like President Loki and Old Loki and Kid Loki, and there's obviously Superior Crocodile Loki. I think his name's Crocodile Loki, and he's superior. He's a superior Loki. That's what Tom Hiddleston says all the time, anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much my figures from the films, because they actually are hand painted, and they actually are the ones from the films, so it does look a lot like Tom Hiddleston as Loki. But I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I've been talking a little bit about the history behind them and the history behind Loki. It's always one of my dreams to talk about this, because I remember when I didn't like Tom Hiddleston once upon a time. I was like, I didn't know anything about him, and now I know everything about him now, and I'm obsessed. I like going into detail, because what I wanted to do was like a Norse mythology sort of like history behind the characters in the 4 films, because there's a lot more to it in the Norse mythology. Like Thor and Loki aren't really brothers in the Norse mythology. They're kind of like just friends. They don't know each other as brothers. They only know each other as brothers in the comics and the films. So I was gonna give you like a little history lesson, you know, into it. But I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, guys. I hope you enjoyed this ramble today. It was just a short little ramble for you, maybe a little bit longer now. And I hope you all have a really good day today. And I will see you all, guys,